Kia ora Aotearoa, welcome whānau to the War on News, your weekly sacred cow slaughtering assault on current affairs, beamed live from the palatial Stratus news bunker buried deep beneath the heart of the Greyland Republic. If this show was a Tomahawk missile being fired at Libya, it would cost $568,000 per missile. On day one, 115 of them were fired. Gaddafi's lucky Obama is attacking him during a recession. In tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, Ken Ring plus moonquakes plus psychic cats equals what the fuck? Is the invasion of Libya called Odyssey Dawn because, like the Odyssey, it's going to take 10 years to complete, and we're enforcing a no-fly zone over Gaza. Rodney Hyde steals Jerry Brownlee's magical mystery mining money machine in the most grossly offensive misapplication of intellectual property rights since Whale Rider Sushi. Plus, this week's Sex in the Super City, Wanko of the Week, and the Barack Obama People's Hair of the Week Award. Leading the war on news this week, brothers and sisters, the Hikoi against the Frolicking Marine Wildlife and Freedom Beach Confiscation Apartheid Act turned up at Parliament this week with all the enthusiasm of a meth addict entering rehab. So utterly disappointed are Māoridom by the Māori Party's political hypocrisy at supporting a bill that legalises racist definitions of land rights that they have reacted the way one does when awaking with a really ugly drunken one-night stand that you don't want to remember or associate with. The political hypocrisy equivalence of what the Māori Party have done would be like the Green Party voting for nuclear power. It's as outrageous as the Samoan Prime Minister claiming one woman is enough in his cabinet, or the supposed welfare reform conference in Wellington in June that will cost $895 to attend. Not many welfare activists or beneficiaries going to be going to that conference then. By voting for legislation that legalises a racist interpretation of land rights, the very issue that birthed them, the Māori Party have become a political joke. And not a funny joke, the kind of punch someone in the balls when they aren't looking YouTube 3 million hits kind of joke. If the Māori Party can hold on to 2 electoral seats, that will be 2 electoral seats more than they deserve. Brothers and sisters, the New Zealand Herald is using a fake news site to promote themselves as a real news source, which, as interesting as that sounds, actually sounds like this. I thought that I had given up on being disappointed by the New Zealand Herald's attempt at journalistic authority, but have been surprised by this attempt in the same way someone is surprised by finding a cancerous lump, not pleasantly. The inability to work out what is the joke news and actual news at the New Zealand Herald and attempting to use the distinction for self-congratulation is like the US Army using Apocalypse Now as defence evidence at a war crimes tribunal. New Zealand Herald editorials consistently read like a team of lepers judging a beauty competition. Their delusion of objectivity could only be beaten if Fox News appointed Charlie Sheen their new chief reporter. The New Zealand Herald is so biased that John Key could club a baby seal pup to death, slow roast it, and eat it live on television, and the New Zealand Herald would still blame the baby seal pup for being delicious. The New Zealand Herald may well be the best daily paper in New Zealand, but that's only because everyone else stopped trying in the 1980s. Reading the New Zealand Herald is a little bit like sleeping with your cousin. Sure, it feels good, but you know it's not right. Now that whānau is joke news. Brothers and sisters, why are we arresting cancer patients for cultivating marijuana? Peter Davey and Timaru is facing serious jail time for growing marijuana as he battles cancer. Seeing as this is the 5th time Peter has been busted, one would suggest he ain't for quitting the Mary Jane. So we're going to throw a cancer patient who uses marijuana for pain relief into prison to do what? Heal him? How is a cancer patient who uses marijuana going to get better in prison? Why arrest a sick man for a drug we all know is much less harmful for you than cigarettes or booze? If the government really wanted to protect your health, they would shut down every KFC in the country. Whānau, I don't think marijuana should be decriminalised. I think it should be mandatory, especially for uptight cops and politicians with God complexes. For those who claim marijuana leads to crime, have you ever tried opening a door stoned? If criminals are smoking weed, good. All they will rob are Dunkin' Donut shops, and in hostage situations, all we need to do is tempt them out with a pizza. Put the bong down. We've got a meat lover's pizza with extra anchovies. Look, the marijuana laws are bullshit. You know it, I know it, they know it. Putting a cancer patient in prison for marijuana is as counterproductive as masturbating with a cheese grater. To the headlines, whānau. So it turns out that Ken Ring, who has terrified the good people of Christchurch with his moonquake predictions, was also a magician in the 1970s who called himself Mr. Good Times, which apparently is what Labour Party whip Darren Hughes gets called after midnight as well. Mr. Good Times also published books on how to explore the psychic influences of numerology and the zodiac on your cat by looking at their paws. Which all leads to the question, should the mainstream media be giving panic time to a man who claims to read cat paws to establish the psychic aura of your cat when it comes to the geophysical science of earthquakes? Whānau, if Ken Ring was right and the gravitational pull of the moon can predict earthquakes, then we would have earthquakes every full moon, which we don't, and it doesn't, so we can't. I know. We had a supermoon. He predicted an earthquake, it happened, cue X-Files theme music. That's called a coincidence. They happen a lot, and not to be a stickler for scientific fact, but Ken actually predicted a magnitude 8 quake around midday. We got a magnitude 5 quake early evening. That's like predicting 2 correct lotto numbers on a winning line and then pretending you're a millionaire. Whānau, Ken Ring can't predict earthquakes using the moon any more than I can juggle 5 chainsaws while performing fellatio on a banana. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. After the first day of Odyssey Dawn, when all of Gaddafi's air defences were destroyed, what is left to keep bombing in Libya? Suicide camels? Weapons of mass destruction sandcastles? Western double standards? When will the no-fly zone over Gaza, the West Bank, Yemen and Bahrain start? Why don't we move on other UN resolutions like 242 that demands Israel leaves occupied Palestinian land with as much speed? And at $568,000 per Tomahawk missile, isn't it a shame we don't spend that type of cash as quickly on aid and development? The reason we aren't bombing Yemen and Bahrain is 1, 20% of Bahrain is a US military base, and 2, Yemen is a US ally in their war of terror. If we were so concerned with the monster of today, why are we building the monsters of tomorrow in Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan? This isn't about predicting civilians from authoritarian regimes. It's all about oil Libya provides European markets and the price spike that occurred last month. Seeing as our war in Afghanistan is supposedly for feminism and our war in Iraq is supposedly for democracy, let's make our war in Libya for cyclist rights. That way we can acknowledge this farce for what it is. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Rodney Hyde stole Jerry Brownlee's magical mystery mining money machine to claim that there are $100 billion worth of minerals and conservation land and that we should start open cast mining faster than a UN resolution to bomb Libyan oil. How exactly did we get to this valuation of $100 billion again? Oh, that's right. Mining lobbyist Richard Barker gave Jerry Brownlee the estimate of $140 billion on the back of an envelope while they were at lunch dining on endangered panda. Why should we trust the estimate of a bloke with a vested interest in mining conservation land when NZIER came up with $85 billion when they did a report for the mining industry, and in 2002 Statistics New Zealand put the monetary and physical stock account for minerals at a mere $4 billion. Note, none of this takes into account that the actual amount New Zealanders will gain will be nowhere near as high as any of those valuations. We aren't swapping the cow for some magical beans, we're swapping the cow for some magical pebbles. Magical beans might grow something. Magical pebbles won't give us jack shit unless you are dating someone who has a fetish for magical pebbles, in which case you should just ask yourself, why swap the cow and just pretend those rocks I picked up in the garden are magical pebbles? Take the example of the Coromandel. Jerry Brownlee's magical mystery mining money machine told us there was $54 billion ready to dig up there. How much would we actually gain over 10 years after the mining industry took their cut? $1 billion. That's a mere $100 million per year. We are currently borrowing $300 million per week. Rodney argues that mining conservation land won't damage our clean green image because mines can actually become tourist destinations. Although when he went on his $20,000 taxpayer-funded trip around the world with his girlfriend, he didn't seem to add any holiday trips to open cast mines on his destination list. New Zealand exporters can charge a premium because New Zealand has a clean green image right when clean and green are in short supply. Mine the Coromandel for a measly $100 million per year for a decade, and you put every exporter at risk because you damage the very reason they can charge that premium. Rodney seems to have a build it and they will come mentality towards open pit arsenic mines, which makes By Winning by Charlie Sheen seem like a reasonable psychological evaluation. Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex in the Service City time! Brothers and sisters, the Auckland Summit is being held this week by Len Brown to give the government the opportunity to tell Aucklanders that despite Len winning one of the largest mandates in local political history, and despite decades of Wellington robbing Aucklanders of billions in transport tax-free minimal infrastructure return, that Auckland is going to get jack shit because of the Christchurch earthquake. The Christchurch earthquake has become John Key's favourite excuse to do nothing recently. No new spending, Christchurch quake. Cutbacks to welfare, Christchurch quake. Cutbacks to working for families, Christchurch quake. Dumping interest-free student loans, Christchurch quake. No rail for Auckland, Christchurch quake. The only thing that won't be stopped by the quake is John Key's pointless $2 billion motorway Puhoi expansion, allowing cabinet ministers to race to their holiday homes faster. The economy was already in a double-dip recession well before the Christchurch earthquake. Mr. Key should stop using that tragedy as his political justification to slash and burn public services. Whānau, let's hand out this week's Wanker of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Wanker of the Week has to go to us and our love affair with bashing our children for disciplinary purposes. A New Zealand jury last week acquitted a father from tying his 10-year-old son up around his neck, shaving his head and forcing him to take cold showers because the jury decided that the parents were disciplining their child. Whānau, we wonder why we have such a problem with child abuse in this country when New Zealanders greenlight bullshit like throttling your child with a tie. The father's defence being, I had to strangle my child to save my child. Bravo! The money shot for me was that he used his church tie. He was strangling for Christ. How does shaving your kid's head discipline them? How does using your church tie to strangle your kid discipline them? How does forcing them to take cold showers discipline them? The fact that the jury allowed these parents off shows that it is the adults of New Zealand who need to grow up over Section 59. We do not have a right to treat our children like this. Children need discipline. Sweet Jesus, do they need discipline. But this isn't discipline, this is abuse. And that New Zealand juries allow it only means that abuse is tolerated. New Zealanders think it is their right to bash their kids the way they think it is their right not to use power-saving light bulbs and their right not to use water-saving shower heads. It's all part of the same conservative meme that believes self-assured ignorance should trump reason as public policy, and that saying otherwise is somehow politically correct social engineering. We should all be pretty embarrassed and ashamed of the judgment. Let's end the show by handing out this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award has to go to the United States of America for refusing entry into the US of Malala Joya, an acclaimed women's rights activist and former member of Afghanistan's parliament. She was named in Time magazine's 2010 100 Most Influential People and was set to begin a 3-week book tour for her memoirs, where she criticises the corrupt nature of the puppet regime America have propped up. The reason the US have denied her entry, you'll love this, because they deem her unemployed and claim she lives underground. She, of course, lives underground because she's been the target of 5 assassination attempts because of her courage and speaking up for women's rights in Afghanistan. Seeing as we are supposed to be bombing Afghanistan back into the Stone Age for feminism, doesn't it strike anyone else as slightly churlish to deny entry to one of the few Afghanistan female politicians who have had the courage to speak out about the lack of rights for women in that country? Being a party to this war, why aren't we criticising America for denying Joya's entry? What are we doing in this war again when the very justification is banned from talking in the US? That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget my new show, Citizen A, plays Friday, 7:30 p.m, Freeview 21 and Sky 89. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter account and Citizen Bomber Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy out here, though. Righto.